So tēnā koutou katoa, bonsoir, good evening. Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you here with us. My name's Robyn Parsons and I'm married to the youngest son of an amazing author, and I am so thrilled to be here to help her celebrate the launch of her very first ever fiction book. I'm so excited. We've actually got 4 copies in our household. It happened on 5th Street, a tale of forgotten heroes. And I'm especially thrilled, one, because I love Robyn, but 2, because I love this book. I was very privileged to read a very early copy of it. And also during the lockdown, my favourite highlight of lockdown has been reading out loud to my children. And this, of course, has been their favourite book and has generated all sorts of incredible conversations. So thrilled to have you all here tonight. Just to give you a bit of a rundown of the night, we're going to hear a bit from Robyn and be doing a bit of a Q&A. We're going to be asking you to contribute questions tonight as well, and there will be prizes for the 2 best questions, or whichever 2 that Robyn chooses. We also have a real special on the book tonight, so I'll put the details about that into the chat a little later on as well. But Robyn's done an amazing special. You might have seen it online that it was $33 plus postage, all these things. Tonight, you can get the book for just $25, and Robyn's even throwing in the postage, so I think that's pretty amazing. So I'll put the details in the link of how you can do that, and you can obviously do that later on. So I'd like to start by just doing an intro. An official intro for those of you that don't know Robyn. So Robyn, a number of you will know Robyn as the Time Queen. She specialises in teaching and keynote speaking on time management and productivity to businesses around the world, and she's done that for over 30 years. She's no stranger to tuning out books. Her first title, Getting a Grip on Time, was published in 1996, and since then she's gone on to write 7 other non-fiction titles, which I hope you have. I'm sure many of you have these at home. A number of them have been bestsellers in New Zealand and Australia and never out of print. And in the last 2 years, she's updated them, and they're now all available on a range of digital platforms, including Amazon and Kobo. However, there's another side to Robyn's writing ability. She's also passionate about stories from the past. So it's not surprising she's now turned her writing skills to historical fiction, my favourite. And we're here to celebrate her debut novel, It Happened on 5th Street, a tale of forgotten heroes. So I'd like to invite you to charge your glasses, and I'm going to do a couple of photos as a snapshot. So if you have a glass with you, charge your glasses. Don't hold them in front of your face, hold them to the side so we can see you. And I'd love to get a photo right now of you all. So wherever your webcam is, look at it right now, give it a big smile. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Lovely. And I'll hand over to Robyn herself to say a few words. Robyn.
Thank you, guys. And my glass is empty, as I did confess before, because I'm not going to take the time to run the risk of opening a bottle of champagne by myself, since Kirsty ended up not being able to hear you. Those of you that were there earlier heard that little bit. So thank you so much for coming. It's fantastic that you're here to celebrate this. It's been such a journey, this whole production of doing a novel, and there's been a number of people on this call tonight that have been part of that story. So I just really, really treasure the fact that you've come to help celebrate tonight. Lauren's got a bit of a quiz for you. And before we start, I just want to say, Lauren, thank you so much for being here and for supporting me in just this awesome way. So shall we do the quiz now, do you think? You're on mute.
Absolutely. And as you know, with technology, sometimes it works and it does exactly what you want, and sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see how we go tonight. I have got 5 quiz questions, but I might have to do them a little differently to the normal system. But let's see. I've got a little a poll, actually, which will be a quiz for you. And just a few fun questions. So I've just opened that up. The quiz is now open. I invite you to guess, if you need to, or perhaps you may know, how many grandchildren does Robyn have? Is it 7? Is it 12? Is it 17? Is it 22? So just a bit of fun. I can see the results are coming in and coming in. Yes, we've got 13, 14, 15, 17, 19 votes. Okay, so keep on voting, keep on voting. I'll give you 5 more seconds. The votes are...
My cousins, Ellen and Margaret, looking there and going, how many has she got?
This is going to be telling, isn't it? Okay, final last 3 seconds, 2 and 1. I'm going to close that off. and let's share the results.
It clicked off before.
So the majority of people believe that Robyn has 12 grandchildren. So Robyn, how many grandchildren do you actually have?
17.
17. She once told us she wanted 20. Maura, we stopped at 3. We weren't going to go and have 6 kids just to try to excellent. All
Well,
right.
and Jodie's beautiful 2 children are almost, they're sort of quasi grandchildren. So that almost makes 19. You know, I cheat.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Now, unfortunately, the way that the poll is set up, I'm not able to access poll number 2, but I can just type it in here. Let's just do it a little bit of the old-fashioned way. How long, type in the chat for me, how long, here's the question in the chat. So the chat is the bottom centre. How long do you believe it's taken Robyn to write the book? I'll give you 4 options. Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years? How long do you think it's taken Robyn to write this book? It happened on 5th Street, A Tale of Forgotten Heroes. So we'll just have a look in the chat. If you open up the chat, it may open in a pane to the side where you can keep an eye on it. So we've got quite a few people saying 3, quite a few people saying 10. Pretty much 3 and 10 across the board. So Robyn, how many years did it really take you to write the book?
Well, you know, you're probably all right on many levels, because although it was 3 years of serious intention and working hard at it, in between rewriting all the non-fiction ones and getting them up online as well, there's really been, in fact, it's been even more than 10 years to do when I first started doing the research. So thank you, everybody. You're all right. How's that?
3 years of focus work. Okay, the next question is, how many times did Robyn travel to Cincinnati for research? So you may know that Cincinnati plays a huge part in the book. How many times? So either once, twice, 3 times, or 6 times. How many times do you believe Robyn travelled all the way to Cincinnati to do some research for the book? Entertaining. Lots of different answers there. We've got 3s, we've got 6s, we've got twice. Everyone thinks it was more than once. There we go. Okay, oh, we've got answers across the board now. Answers across the board. So tell us the correct answer, Robyn. How many times did you go to Cincinnati?
I've actually went 3 times. The first time was really just to get the flavour of the place, and that was so long ago. The thing is about going to Cincinnati, in fact, perhaps a little bit about how I got started on this particular story, is that about, I think it was around 2001, 2002, my auntie showed me some family letters, and they were centered around, most of them were centered around Cincinnati, and that got me curious. I was attending a conference in Florida for the Professional Speakers Association, and thought, oh, well, I'll just go and see where this place was. I hadn't decided to write a story. I was just curious about this really interesting family history. So that was the first time. And then we'll talk more about that, perhaps how the book came about later on. And then once I got serious about it, it was, I think, around 2010, I went back and I started doing the research. So the story had been percolating all of that time, but I'd been too busy doing sort of traveling internationally with my time management work and speaking and training and writing all the non-fiction books. Mm-hmm. So the first serious research was 2010, and then I went back in 2017 and really drilled down and did a whole lot more research as well, which I'll tell you about in due course. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So I've got 2 more questions for you to keep it interactive here. Next question is, what period is the book? Oh, typo. What period is the book predominantly set in? Only allowed to have typos in the meeting, not in the book. So I'll give you some options. Is it the 1810s and 20s? Is it the 1830s and 40s? Or is it the 1880s and 90s? So have a guess, or perhaps you have an inclination. 10s and 20s, 30s and 40s, or 80s and 90s?
If you haven't read it, of course, you've got no way of knowing. So it's just guess, it's fun.
Yeah, that's the one. Fantastic. So we've got a lot of people saying 30s and 40s. We've got some 80s and 90s. Tell us about the era that the book is set in, Robyn.
Yes, the 1830s and 40s. It starts with the story begins in 1837, and it then goes, it finishes in 1841.
Very good. Okay, one final question for you tonight, and that is, you may or may not know that there is an amazing twist of time travel in the book. So what is the item that allows the main character Abby to time travel from 2015 in Auckland, New Zealand, back to Cincinnati in 1837? Is it a coin, a pen, or a knife? Have a guess. What do you think she uses to time travel? Could it be a coin, a pen, or a knife? Wouldn't it be nice if you were able to get $1 million from this? Who wants to win $1 million? Who wants to just have some fun and have a quiz? Oh, we've got a pretty unanimous answer there. I don't know if people are, we've got some people going for a pen, some people going for a knife, mostly going for the coin. Interesting, interesting. So Robyn, tell us, what is the correct answer?
Indeed, it is the coin. And perhaps I've made that fairly abundantly clear with the publicity, but yes, it is. It's just a little small coin, and that brings Abigail, who is the modern girl, loosely modelled, not so very loosely probably, but a whole different age range from me, modelled on myself and Great Aunt Hannah. So there's Abigail and Great Aunt Hannah are sorting through family letters, and Abigail finds an old coin which has got a hole in it, and she ends up putting it around her neck, and poof, bang, suddenly she's transported back to 1837.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a really incredible twist to the book because so much of the book is based on fact, and I love that fictional twist just brings it to life, and certainly for my young children even, they found that really fascinating. So let's just have a bit of a Q&A time. I'm going to throw some questions at Robyn. I invite you to start thinking of questions that you want to ask, and what I'm going to do first of all is just put yourself just in the chat to put in that info about that special. So right in the chat right now, you've got the link where you can go and purchase the book straight after this, or right now if you cannot wait. Make sure that you use the code HERO. So this is the Tale of Unforgotten Heroes, and Tale of Forgotten Heroes that we don't want to forget. So make sure you use the code HERO so that you can get the book for a special of just $25 tonight and free postage. So Robyn, just tell us, how did the book first come about? What made you want to write about this?
I see there's a question from Barbara. Is there a Kobo version? I'm sorry, Barb, there isn't. But you and I can chat offline and I can come up with some plan for you.
Great, excellent. So Robyn, tell us about how did the book first start, and what was it that made you want to write about this topic?
Okay, I'm going to answer Kath's question first before I do that one too. Sorry, Laura.
Okay.
So my Australian friends are asking this. So no to Kobo. Kath, yes, there's definitely a Kindle version as well. So if you go to Amazon.com, you'll find the Kindle version, which is extremely inexpensive as always. So just remember one little thing. It's Robyn R. Pearce. I needed to differentiate in Amazon. It's an algorithm thing. I won't even try to explain it. So now back to your question. Sorry.
And one more question about that, because people are keen to get the book. Is the free postage to Australia or just for New Zealand?
I will do it to Australia as well. Thank you, my lovely Australian friends.
Oh, that is so generous. That'll probably cost you more than the book. So that's super generous. Make sure you buy 2 copies. Okay. Lovely. All right.
Into that.
No, that's great. So just tell us, how did the book come about? Tell us a bit of the story.
Right. Okay. I've given you a little bit of a touch on it. It was the family letters that my Aunt Peggy, very elderly, she's now 96, but 20 years ago, handed me a sheaf of papers, and she said, have a look at this. She'd been working with another distant relative who had an amazing repository of letters in a tin trunk. And Peggy also had letters, family letters from our ancestors on the Manukau Harbour, which is where part of our family comes from. So that's how it actually really started. But when Peggy handed me the letters, she said, Alf is, I think, the most interesting person in the family. They all did really interesting things, and there are some dramatic events in here, but I think Alf really is interesting. He went on to have a very interesting life. Why don't you think about writing a story? I've been planning to write fiction for years, but because there's been so much non-fiction, it just hasn't happened. Anyway, so I've already told you the number of times I went to Cincinnati, and I just got absorbed with it. So I've got I'll just show you. Where are we? So, like, this is one box of papers, and here are just some of the I've got something there to show you, carefully transcribed sheets of paper that this other lady, Robyn Burnett, who's a distant family member, and she's a direct descendant of the Burnett family, had spent a lifetime basically transcribing. She has just worked so hard, Robyn has, to get all these letters transcribed and put back story there and explanations about the period and things like that. It's not a novel, and if any of you have done any research on letters, you will know that people's letters don't make such engaging reading if you're wanting to get a really exciting story, because there's all of the family detail and things like that. But what I found as I got into it, and I got into it quite seriously, like you might not be able to see it here, but there's red wine being spilt on the pages and all sorts of things here. But what I found when I started really writing the book was that the letters informed the story rather than were the book, because of the fact that it becomes a little bit unwieldy to have large chunks of letters in it. And the lovely Judy White there, who's helped me, and Greg Hall, the two in our writing group, and Kirsty, who's probably back online now, Annette, who's online, Jodie, various friends have been, and Lauren as well, that folks that have read some of the early drafts have said, made really useful comments. One of the things as a writer, we always getting drummed into us is you've got to show, not tell. So the other Robyn here online, you're nodding, I can see that. And it was a really interesting exercise to get rid of that. Kirsty, who's probably there, and I can't see both screens simultaneously, but Kirsty was just so helpful to me, the lovely friend that brought me the wine, the champagne tonight, and she went through the manuscript and she said, Rob, do you want this to read like a school journal? Well, no. Do you want this to be boring? Well, no. So I had to get the editorial pen, you could say, of computers out more than once, and there's been multiple versions. It's a bit of a long explanation to your question. Thank you, Lauren.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's really exciting. And tell me, when you were doing all the research, what were some of the things you discovered? I know that there were things like the amazing letters. Perhaps you can even show us some of that amazing writing. I know you talked about cross-hatching.
Yes, I've got the cross-hatching example here. Now, I don't know whether you can see it or not. I'll read a little piece later on, but can you see that letter?
Yes.
Yes. That is an example of crosshatch writing. Now, what that was, that's facing upright. So they would write across the page, and then, because they were in those days, they were often short of paper, and then they would write across that way. So,
Wow.
fortunately, not very many of the letters were written like that, I'm pleased to tell you. But both my Aunt Peggy and Robyn Burnett, the other lady who had done this immense amount of research, they were the ones that did all that. And I really honour them for the research that they've done, because it's an amazing primary resource for any author to have put into their hands, basically. But the crosshatch, they only included a small amount of that. There's a vast amount of other material accessible to the general public, in actual fact. The Alexander Turnbull Library, there's the Whanganui Regional Museum, as well as these two elderly ladies who've got things in their tin trunks. So I need to explain how that story gets to be here in New Zealand. You're going to ask me that, weren't you, Lauren?
Yeah, just tell us a bit more about the plot. I think you're maybe going to read us some excerpts. I think that'd be lovely.
All right.
Or however you want to do it. I mean, just share.
Okay, I'm not looking at my time now. I can't see the time, Lauren. You'll have to be watching.
7:27.
Oh, good. Okay, I've got you all up on screen, and so I can't actually see what was relying on the computer to tell me what the time was. So the basic plot is that there's Abigail is looking through the letters. She ends up in suddenly time warping into 1837, and she finds young Alf busy looking through documents, and he's actually looking at a letter that his family has just sent, which is the same letter that Abigail has just read in 2015. So that's the beginning of the premise, and she goes together. They're trying to work out what the secret was, because it was clearly a secret. And it might be easiest if I just perhaps read you some pieces and string the plot together that way. So she's just for interest, just wave your hands. How many of you have already read the sample of the first 4 chapters, or you've read the book? Just let me get a bit of a sense. Just only a few. That's all right. So I'll assume that not too many of you have. So there is a sample of 4 chapters on my website. Greg, thanks very much. Lovely to see you. So the 2 young people start out trying to work out what the secret is. And although it is written from the perspective of young people, and initially I was thinking, is it a young adult book? In actual fact, it's almost all adults that have been reading, apart from Lauren's children so far, who have read it thus far and are telling me that it's an adult story as well. It's one of those cross genre type books, just in case you were wondering about the young person protagonists. So Abigail's ended up in Cincinnati, and I'm just going to, in Utica. The family has split into 2 by this point, the Burnett family. They have come from England originally. They've arrived in New York. They spent some time in New York in the early 1830s, and then they decided they had 2 children die in New York, and there was a lot of mortality in those days, and so they decided to head up to Utica, which is at upstate New York, and this is all true, to start a bakery. Oh, and I'll answer your question later, Robyn.
Yeah, I'll bring the questions up later. You just carry on.
All right. Yes, thank you, because I'll get distracted. So they had this bakery going, a business, and then father got what we would today call radicalized by the terrible things happening with slavery. So that gives you a bit of background, which you wouldn't know when you just first started reading the book. So here we are. We've got these 2 young people. Now we ended up in 1837. And Abigail, I'll just read you this little piece from chapter 5. Abigail and Alf are trying to sort out what the heck is going on. So this is in the voice of Alf here. Could your arrival here be anything to do with that coin around your neck? It looks exactly like mine. Are you sure you're not a prankster or a thief? She started to protest, but I wasn't taking no for an answer. I'm going to see if my coin is still in my room, and you're coming with me. I put the letter back in its not-so-secret place, shut the desk, and returned the key, grabbed her hand and pulled her after me into the hallway. I dared not leave her in the parlour. We climbed the dark wooden stairs. Our house was rather large for just 3 people, though it had not seemed so before my parents and 3 sisters removed to Cincinnati the year before. As a result of this change in family arrangements, we had an empty bedroom, and I now enjoyed the big room that used to house my 3 sisters. Surprisingly tidy for a boy, said my accidental companion as we stepped into my sun-filled room at the back of the house. I went straight to the 3 shelves Joseph had put up. My box of tin soldiers and few precious books were on the top shelf, and the rock and curio collection took up the 2 lower shelves so I could easily sort and arrange them. It took only a quick look at my small selection of old coins to see the one I wanted wasn't there. Just to be sure, I scrabbled through the arrowheads and other small artifacts gathered from where the Indians used to camp down by the Mohawk. Then I checked my coloured stones. No coin. I glared at Abigail. Let me have a closer look at that coin. Leaving it around her neck, she held it out for inspection. That is my coin. You're a thief. I was furious. Hold up, kid. Calm down. She explained how she'd found it in the envelope and decided to try wearing it, then more about her Aunt Hannah, the tin trunk, and the family letters. I didn't know what to do. If I could imagine the unimaginable, it sounded vaguely plausible. She sat down, uninvited, on my bed. Alfred, I promise you everything I've told you is true. She patted the spot beside her. Sit down and let's think what we can do about this. I plonked down beside her, keeping a careful distance. I didn't trust her. She took a different tack. Are you interested in history? Looking at your collection, it would appear so, because here's the thing, so am I. I'd really love to know what it's like to live in your times, and I'm super curious about what happens to your family. Well, our family, actually. And I want to know more of the bizarre things you began to talk about downstairs, I replied cautiously. But you can't stay. There's no way to hide you, even in the spare room. Mary Ann would quickly notice if food went missing. And you can't walk down the street dressed like that. You'd be in prison for vagrancy quicker than the time it takes to rattle a beggar's cup. She looked offended. I don't want to stay, and I'm not a vagrant. These ripped jeans are all the rage. My mother thinks it's silly to pay for jeans with holes in, but the really cool girls love them. I guessed that jeans was her word for the tattered inexpressibles on her lower body. I pointed downward. You mean lots of women display their limbs like that? She snorted with amusement. Kid, you're nuts. If you mean legs, why don't you just say so? I was shocked. You mustn't say legs. No polite lady or girl would use that word. She put her head back and laughed. How I hated people laughing at me. So there's
I love it.
What did your girls think about that, Lauren, when they read that piece about it?
Yeah, they thought that was hilarious. And you know, and later on he talks about, she's calling me kid, I'm not a goat. Because of course they didn't have the word kid for children, and interesting that, you know, she's turned up in these ripped jeans from modern day. Yeah, the girls were very, yeah, they just found that delightful and entertaining. They did think that we should take out the swearing, however that was their bit of feedback, but I think that you felt it was in keeping with it. So no, it's excellent, and it is.
Yeah.
It's lovely hearing you read it.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Well, Abigail a couple of times said shit, I think, or might have said bloody hell, I can't remember. But when you really study the language, it's amazing how really particular they were in those days about anything that we would think is quite common language these days.
Exactly.
Those words, and well, they weren't even allowed to say legs. So
that's right. Amazing. We've got some wonderful questions coming in. So your super niece Jodie, who I love, has taken up the idea to give herself a super name. She's asked, what was the biggest challenge, Robyn, in shifting from non-fiction to fiction? And Barbara's also asked, what motivated you most to shift? So tell us about that.
Well, I've always wanted to write fiction, interestingly enough, but I also love my time management work, and I've done that for so long now. So it was logical to do the time management whilst I was a speaker and a trainer, and I was working around the world and doing that. And they were the things that I was really dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But it was very hard, actually, to shift to writing fiction. I wanted to do it, but I wanted the time as well. And so I saw a question there earlier on, I think from Robyn Welsh, asking about time. I had to use all my time management skills to stay focused on one thing at a time. So I've actually not been really working hard on filling my bookings with time management work for the last couple of years or so, because I really wanted to get this job done with the writing this novel, but I've got so many other stories that I want to tell. And I think another thing about writing historical fiction, which I just love, is I've always been in love with historical fiction for myself, for my own personal reading. That's one thing. And growing up as a child, I did my primary schooling in the Bay of Islands in New Zealand. My old school was just up the hill from the stone store and the old wooden house. So I felt as if I was living in the cradle of New Zealand history, European history at that time, and it just engaged and excited me. So then when I found years later that our family, like Ellen and Margaret there, we've got on the Driver and the Brown side, we've got masses of information there. We've got things on my mum's side, which is where this story has come from. There's ancestors who came from France, and they were Huguenots, and they had to flee to England. There's so many amazing stories. We don't have to make it up. It's all there, and that's really what got me that gave me what I wanted to write about, but then it was just finding the time. And so really I've actually pushed back on a lot of my time management work so that I can just be focused on this.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So that hopefully answers a little of Robyn's question. Kylie also asked on similar lines, were you one of those dedicated authors that set yourself a word limit each day to achieve? Tell us about that writing process.
I did, as a matter of fact, Kylie. That's a great question. Whilst I was fully immersed in it, I set myself a minimum of 500 words a day. And that doesn't sound very much as in actual fact, but it's surprising how quickly 500 words clicks away. And then every now and again, I would do 1,000. And there are many writers who write significantly more than that. But if you just do 500, and another time management tip was I did it first thing in the morning. If I didn't do it first thing in the morning, it didn't get done because that's my creative time.
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic. Another really great question that's just come through around, there's so much going on in the world at the moment, obviously, again, about the work that needs to happen in terms of equality and justice for all. Someone's just, I'll just come back up to it. So Judith just said, your book with its theme of slavery has become quite topical currently. What are your thoughts on that, Robyn?
Scarily so, when all of this stuff, because what we haven't, a lot of you don't yet know, we haven't really got into it. It is talking about I don't want to give all the story away, but we end up eventually in Cincinnati, where father has, as I touched on before, had become radicalized about the whole slavery issue. Radicalized in what, in those days, somebody who wanted slavery to be abolished was on the outer. The abolitionists were not popular at that stage. And father got right into it. He, well, I will tell you this little bit because it's with our modern understanding, we know about this, that they were members of the Underground Railroad. And that was the secret that they didn't want Alf to know because it was so dangerous. And there are all sorts of really dramatic and really dangerous things that really, really did happen to the family, which is why it ended up eventually with one branch of the family coming to New Zealand. So I'll leave you to read that all in the book. But going back to the relevance to today's time, riots, we're reading about riots at the moment. There's a riot in this book. There's injustice to Black people. And the next book that I'm planning and researching on already actually takes that step one, a whole stage further when Alf is an adult. It's dealing with that. And one of the other minor characters in this book is an amazing person called John Mercer Langston. He just is a young boy in the story. He's a real character. He was a man of mixed race. He became the first lawyer, one of the first Black lawyers in America, the first Black man to have a civic position. He was the only Black man to be elected to the Senate from Virginia for 100 years, over 100 years, because once he got elected, then he was the Jim Crow laws came in, and no more got elected for another 100 years after him. But the story of what happened there, that will be in the next book. But there's just so many inequities, and I think as New Zealanders particularly, and Australians as well, we are such an egalitarian societies, and we hate injustice. So many of us hate injustice, and I think that was one of the things that drove me. And a number of my American friends who've looked at this have said, but why are you interested in our history? I don't think you have to be an American to be really upset and concerned about these things.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what I do love about it is it just brings it to life. And as I said, I mean, my children are as young as 5, but I'm reading it to them, and I did have to skip over a few parts in the riots because it is very heavy and hard to read. And it's passionate, and it impacts you, and it's really brings it to life. And our girls, it really impacted them so much to think that's just not right. How can one person own another person? How can they treat them like that? So it's been brilliant in terms of creating that thought and those discussions. So yeah, it's fantastic. But a number of people, Robyn, that have commented they loved hearing you reading it, and they've
Oh,
suggested that your next project could be recording it as an audio book. So that might have to be something down the track. Also, just some feedback from Catherine, who's gone online, followed the link through to Amazon, and found that actually, because it took her to Amazon.com, couldn't actually order it for herself in Australia, so she had to go through to the .com.au. So others may find that as well, but I'm sure that you'll be able to navigate your way through, search for it on your .com.au if you need to, and get it that way. Or if you're in New Zealand, just use the first link and we can send that out to you, or Robyn
and
can send that out
you'll
to you.
get
And also she will sign the copies. Did we confirm that? Is that right?
Yes. And what I can do, if you're ordering a physical copy, I obviously can't sign the digital ones, but I can. When you order online to my shopping cart, which the link, Lauren's given you the link. When you get into the shopping cart, there's a space there for comments. So if you would like it signed to somebody else because you want to give it as a gift to somebody else, just put whoever it is that you want it signed to, or your name, and put it the way you like your name to be written so that I can get that right. That would be all cool.
Fantastic. So I'll put that in the chat again, just so it's handy in case you're looking for it. So it's got the code there to use and the link if you're wanting it to be sent out. Now, there's another super question from Super Niece Jody. Robyn, did you find it challenging to honour the history, but also adapt the story for creative reasons?
That's a great question, actually, Jody. And no, I didn't actually. There's things that I invented, like the really dramatic explosion on the Hudson River. That didn't happen to the Burnett's, but it happened. So there were various things that I did invent, and I've itemized them all at the back of the book. So I've got a whole section of about 10 pages that says, for those that want to know more, sharing what was true and which were the made up bits. Michelle, I love your dog. That's very cute. So, there's talking about the other abolitionists. I tell you, somebody who gets a quite as a significant portion in here is Harriet Beecher Stowe. And a number of you probably know that she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was one of the significant pieces of literature that really changed the mindset of the American populace about the evils of slavery. And that was where history and fiction collided beautifully, and I was able to really honor it. And I was excited to find that she lived in Cincinnati, because they were anti-slavery, but the Beecher Stowe family, or the Beecher family, of which she was the daughter of, they weren't abolitionists in the full sense of the word. There were 3 different levels of abolition at that, or 3 different opinions, I should say, about the way to stop slavery at that stage. There was the gradual sort of phasing out, just letting people not be slaves anymore as they were born. There were the instant abolition, which was a very unpopular option, and then there was the colonists' option, which was pick up all the blacks and ship them to Liberia. Now, you've got to remember that those people, by that stage, many of them had been born, they were Americans the same as any other American. They had been living in, there'd been several generations since their original ancestors had been shipped over from Africa. And the option of instant abolition, as I said, was really, really unpopular, because the reason being that it was affecting very dramatically the commerce. So if you hit people's
Are you losing the audio there for Robyn, or is that just me?
No, I think
just dropping out. Okay, so obviously if you're just talking about you hit people's pockets, I think you're back again, Robyn. We just lost you there.
Oh, okay. It just came across that it was unstable. Can you hear me now all right?
Yes. Yep. So you're just saying if you're hitting people's pockets.
Oh, if you abolition of slavery was hitting people's pockets. So the people who were pro-abolition, including the people in the Underground Railroad, were they were really ostracized, and that comes up very strongly through in the story.
Wow. Another question on this sort of topic, and I'll come back to your questions as well, Kerry, but one from Diane Levy here. Having thought deeply about all of those times, Robyn, what do you think is the appropriate way to deal with statues? Do you have thoughts on that?
Look, yes, and it's probably not a popular one. I don't think those statues should be taken down, personally, because they are history, and people were they were a product of their times. If we start rewriting history, we're no better than all of the people through the centuries that have gone and rewritten history. Like, for example, Richard III, for centuries, he was regarded as being the bad guy that killed the princes in the Tower. But I've got a whole story about that, which I won't go into, about how I really got woken up to that by a wonderful teacher that Nan and Madeline on the call remember, Sheila Peacock, who was our teacher at Rotorua Girls High, and she got us to read a book called Daughter of Time by Josephine Tay. I'm not going to tell you the story because it'll take too long, but it really highlighted for me as a young girl at 16 that history is written by the victors. So I think we need to know what happened, and you might disagree with me on this one, but I just don't think that it's right to try and rewrite it, to sanitize it. It is what it is. We don't necessarily feel good about those things, but it's part of what happened back then.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Appreciate that. Kerry's asked, Robyn, what insights from your research do you think that the past has to teach us today?
Oh, sorry, bumped my table. That's a good question, Kerry. That's a deep one.
Deep thinking one. Yeah.
Well, I think it teaches us compassion. Each of us in our individual places, we do the best we can with what we know. Even Alf, for example, and I know this because I've read the letters forward, because the letters, the huge volumes of letters that I've got of the Burnett family, they go right back right into the 1900s when they were in New Zealand, living in New Zealand, or that one branch of them. He became a very famous writer, but particularly an actor in his later life. And we're really lucky that we've got access to some of his writings. And there's even a book on in the what's that system that's online, Gutenberg project. So I found one of his books, and some of the things that he was saying. Remember, this is a man who, as a young lad and then as an adult, was absolutely pro-abolition, absolutely against slavery, but the way he talked about Black people wasn't the way we would think was appropriate today. So I think it's really important to remember to remember that people were a product of their environment, and also to be compassionate with the people of today. Maybe that's not a very good answer, but it's the best one I can come up with at the minute.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you, Robyn. Just some of the comments Anne said, so incredibly timely, Robyn. Love what you're doing. Keep telling the stories. Really great. Kerry's also said, yeah, love the way that you've honoured the beliefs of abolition in your description of the story, Robyn. Oh, super nice, Jodie. Another question. I want to know what's next? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Well, it's actually taking Alf as an adult. It's freedom. The thing is, this what I want to write is a whole series of stories about freedom. And
because
yes,
just so you know, people, on the inside cover, can you see that? It says, I don't know if it's back to front, book 1 in the Freedom series. So this is one of many to come.
Yeah, I think thank you, Diane.
Oh, we've just lost you for a second, Robyn. Come back. There you are. You're back. You're back.
I'm driven by the desire for freedom. It's one of my highest values. You know, when you go into training courses and you have to do your sort of work out what your values are, and freedom always comes up for me. So I think our ancestors were driven by the desire for freedom. They were prepared to get in small ships and sail across the world. They didn't all come to New Zealand. The Huguenots that had to escape from Louis XIV in France. But the next book is actually about Alf and John Mercer Langston, as I said, because Alf wanted freedom to go and be an actor. His mother wanted him to stay being a baker and a confectioner. John Mercer Langston, he was just a young, well-educated black boy, he wanted to really champion the rights of black people in America, and he did it amazingly. Yet he's a person that's not very well known. So those are the central themes for the next book.
Wow, we've got some more questions coming in. When we were setting this up, we thought maybe I should have some backup questions in case no one asks questions, and there's just so many. We've only got about 8 minutes to go, so we'll try and get the last couple of questions in, and then we've got to give away some prizes.
Right.
So, also some very...
I was going to read more pieces, but I think we'll stick with the questions because people can read it in the book.
Yeah, well, you can let us know what you'd like, but do make sure you go and grab your copy. But some very big questions, and you may not be able to answer these all tonight. We may just need to be thinking about them. But Peter has asked, with everything going on around the world with BLM, Black Lives Matter, and now All Lives Matter, do All Lives Matter including animals? What do you think? So I know that's perhaps a little bit off topic and a huge question, so a bit of a tough one, but I didn't want to skip over it without telling you.
Well, I think absolutely yes to all of those things in actual fact. However, having said that, the all animals' lives matter. I'm a farming daughter, farming ex-wife, farming mother. Where do we draw the line on that one? I don't think I'll get into the animal one, if you don't mind, Peter. Sorry about that. But absolutely, all lives do matter. Black, white, yellow, it doesn't matter what the colour is, I think. And that really, for me, it's that theme of freedom comes back again. That's where my heart is.
And Jodie said, yeah, freedom is so relative to the time and the expectations of society. What a fabulous theme. Different thoughts in there about the comments. Anne's asked, have you had any negative reactions to the story, Robyn?
Well, not yet. No, I haven't. No, my wonderful beta readers, of whom some are on the call, have helped with the structure of the story. But no, I haven't. Short answer.
Okay. All right. We have had a request for another excerpt. So perhaps if you've got another excerpt in mind, I do think that would be lovely. Right. Really, really lovely. So
I've pulled out a few.
Well, we'll have one more excerpt. And I'll send you a list of all the names that I've got questions from, and you can do a random draw or whatever you want.
Oh, right. Okay, then, Lauren. I'll read you a little bit. I haven't got enough minutes to read you. This is when he gets to Cincinnati. He was living in Utica with his oldest brother Joseph, who's the one that ended up in New Zealand eventually, and wife Mary Ann. And in very late 1839, they went to Cincinnati. What I haven't mentioned, and there's quite a theme about water transport in here as well, and you've got the Erie Canal, you've got the Ohio Erie Canal, are two different canals, travelling on Lake Erie itself, going up the Hudson. So there's quite a bit about that kind of thing, which I found fascinating to research. Had to cut out a whole lot of stuff about Utica actually in the from the original versions. But here he is. They've arrived in Cincinnati. He's now persuaded his mother that he's allowed to leave school and become a baker with his brothers and his father. And he still doesn't know what the secret is that they're keeping from him. His mother had asked him to go down to the cellar and find out if there was another barrel of molasses, because she was sure there should have been, and was father being a bit careless with his counting. As I passed through the hot bakery to the cellar steps, Joseph's new apprentice, Martin, had his broad back to me as he pulled a heavy tray from the big oven. My eyes lit upon a wire rack of still steaming and delectable smelling, sticky currant buns. The rich smell was too good to resist. Juggling a bun from hand to hand, I slipped quickly through the half-open cellar door. I'd already been treated to the hard edge of Martin's wooden spoon on my knuckles. Retreat was a wise option. At that precise moment, no one in the house knew where I was. Glorious peace. Joseph was in the store. Thomas had the morning off, and both parents were out. It was grand to stop for a moment. I stood there in the dark cellar, blowing on my still too hot bun. I'd barely taken the first bite when two sets of footsteps sounded on the floorboards above. Martin, hop up and mind the store for a moment, if you please. It was father's deep voice. Joseph and I have to check something in the cellar. Right-ho, Mr. Burnett, I heard him run upstairs. My bun and I just had time to wriggle out of sight behind the barrels of flour and dry goods. You'd think my brother would remember what it was like to be an ever-hungry youngster, but I knew from hard experience he also had strong opinions about when and how much of the produce I was allowed to sample. "Shut the door, Joseph," I heard. A lucifer was lit. They'd had the foresight to pick up the lantern I should have grabbed. Then, to my surprise, I heard Father say, "Some things it's better for the family and staff not to know details of in case they're questioned by the sheriff." Soft light almost reached my hiding place. I tried to make myself as small as possible, pressing back against the rough brick wall. The barrels blocked their sight of me, but I was merely a hand's reach away, listening intently to every word. I even stopped scoffing my bun, lest they heard me swallow. "I've received a note from Mr. Granger. We can expect a delivery tonight or tomorrow. The hardware will cross just upstream of the river Licking. I need you there, both nights if necessary. Let's pray there's no watchers on the Kentucky side, or the crossing may not be possible." And so it goes on. So its father is instructing Joseph on a delivery.
Wonderful, very exciting. I think that we should do some cheers and a round of applause to you, Robyn. So I'll invite you, if you don't have too much background noise or you're happy to, just click unmute. So just bottom left-hand side, we'll do a little hip hip hooray, shall we?
You'll hear the rain here.
Oh, Peter, yes, and Peter, I'm sorry, there's no sailing in the book. But I'd like to propose a toast to a brilliant book by a brilliant woman. Happened on 5th Street, A Tale of Forgotten Heroes. Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hooray! Hip hip!
Hooray!
Oh,
Robyn!
Oh, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Well, I've loved doing it. It's just been awesome. So, Lauren, have you got us a couple of winners there?
Do you want me to just do a random name? I think there's so many brilliant questions you've had tonight.
Yes,
I've put them on a side screen. Are you ready? Drum roll. And one goes to super niece Jody, who I think did ask 3 questions. So woohoo, well done, super niece Jody.
And I gave one to Jody. Yeah, were you going to say that, Jode?
I would love to. I was going to buy one to send it to my super niece April.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, you've got it.
Why don't you give it to someone else?
Oh, okay, darling. Because I just gave.
Well, Robyn, do you want to tell us what the prizes are actually as well?
Oh! I'm just going to give 2 books away. So
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Drum roll. We'll do another one.
Sorry, there's one other thing. If anyone would like a digital copy of any of my other time management books as well, you're very welcome. So you'll get a copy of this plus one of my non-fiction books. And you can see all of them on another website, just robynpearce.com. You can see all the new versions there. So, okay. So
highly recommend those. So drum roll. And this one goes to Kylie Eltham. So thank you for your question, Kylie.
One of my neighbours.
Wonderful. So if you can make sure that you email Robyn, respond to any of her emails, and it will come straight into her inbox.
No, I don't. Look at that.
Fantastic. So I'll just put everyone back on mute.
Child of mine does.
There we are. And Robyn, I'll just invite you to say a few words perhaps to close off the night.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, Lauren, I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. Now, guys, Lauren is amazing. It's almost like I've passed the mantle to Lauren, I often feel. So if you're wanting anything to do with health, well-being and productivity, she's your go-to girl. She lives in Palmerston North. She's a top speaker. She's done amazing things. She's done a TEDx talk when she lived in Canada. Your website, Lauren, would you like to just say it so I don't get it wrong?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'm at laurenparsonswellbeing.com, and have to say that Robyn's been an amazing mentor, just inspiration to me over the years as a professional speaker, and a different topic to mine, just given me so many great ideas, and I've just looked up to her and learned so much off her, and it's been wonderful to actually work together. We've done retreats together, we've done training days, I've been along to her sessions, I've learned so much, and yeah, I do feel like I'm following your footsteps a little, but I've not yet ever tried to attempt something as mammoth as this task. So I do take my hat off to you.
Thank you. So big thanks to you, Lauren. Lovely thanks to Kirsty for the champagne. Thank you, sweetie. Thank you to all of you for showing up. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful party. When it was locked down, I thought, oh well, this is the only way we can do it. And then I thought, well, this way nobody has to drive. We can have people from overseas. Awesome that you guys from Australia have shown up. There was one gentleman from Dubai, Saudi Arabia, that even registered, but I don't think I've seen his name. But Iman, if you are here, lovely. And the rest of you, all you lovely folks, thank you so much for coming and joining in the joy.
Wonderful. And I'll just remind you as well, I've put the link in there again where you can access the book to buy a copy or several. Christmas is coming up. Why not get yourself some of these to share with friends? And honestly, it is such an inspiring page turner of a book. Kept me up late at night, entertained myself, my husband. You know, sometimes I'd be reading to the kids during lockdown, and Morrow should have been going back to do work, but he was just sort of staying there listening in and listening in and listening in. It's an amazing book and so topical, something that we need to hear about. So I thank you, Robyn, for all your time and effort. I'm just so excited seeing it come to life. So make sure that you get in, grab that special, and it is available until Saturday night midnight. So you can also share that with your friends and family and help to get this message out. So thank you all. I'll do unmute it all again so you can say your farewells to Robyn.
Thank you, guys. And
Bye, everybody.
oh, thank you so
Robyn.
much.
Thank you so much.
Well done. Congratulations. What an amazing achievement.
Oh, thank you, guys.
See you, Robyn.
Bye.
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 Bye, Robyn.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Alan and Margaret. Lovely to see you in your home.
Just, yeah.
Oh. Cool. Oh, it's
Lots of lovely comments coming through. Lots of thanks in the chat.
Oh, so we have got Isam here from Saudi Arabia. That's awesome. Oh, good. As well as all the rest of you. So cool. Thank you.
More and more messages coming in the chat. Fantastic. No one wants to leave. We just want to stay and hang out, don't we?
I'm going to go. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Lots of love, Jodie. See you for the 50th.
Yes, definitely.
Lovely.
Go on the 11th.
See you for the birthday, boys.
Thanks, Peter. Lovely to see you here.